Right. The lesson that we're going to discuss for this morning is about research introduction. So I know you already have ideas what is research introduction because this is the very same topic that I discussed last semester during your qualitative research. But let me ask you, or if you can still remember, what's the rhetorics or moves that we use for research introduction or background of the study? If you can still remember.
There's more
Santa? Sa Raven?
cars, sir.
Ours. Yeah, that's right. But who's the author? Who's the author? Or the other term for cars? Agoy, nakalimot na.
In
Very
the top
important sa to, Angelo.
steps man, sir, no? Or move.
Yeah, the steps or the moves. What do you call them?
Ay, what? Oh, balo, sir.
It starts with letter J.
John's Wales.
Yeah, exactly. That's John Swale's moves. Okay, it's very important that we need to know how to write research introduction because that's the part of the research wherein you're going to indicate the problem that you're going to solve or going to address. Okay, the first part of your research is the background of the study or research introduction. The purpose of research introduction is to introduce or present the research problem. You need to clarify important variables, discuss its delimitations, and specify its significance to the field of the study. That's research introduction. The cars, 8 research states, or the John Swales moves. Okay. First, before you can write a research introduction, you need to identify the problem first. What do you mean by that? Anything which gives a person a feeling of discomfort. Anything that gives you a feeling of uneasiness, anything that bothers you, or something that stirs up your curiosity. Perceive discrepancy between what is and what should be. When we say discrepancy, it means the difference, the significant difference on things that's supposed to be the same or something that is not equal or something that gives different notions. Can be initially stated in a form of question. So when we see research problem, it sets out the rationale, which will be the basis of your research. Right. Research introduction leads the reader from a general subject area to a particular topic of inquiry, which means that research introduction is in the deductive form, which means from general to specific. When you write your research introduction, when you present a graphic um, representation of what's supposed to be the organization of introduction, it should be in a inverted pyramid, which means that from general and then you narrow down to specific notions about your research. Contextualizes the research so that readers can understand why you have created it, which means that you need to specify the situation. What's the setting? What's happening? You need to provide your observation in a contextualized manner. Which means ano yung specific na na-observe ninyo? Sets out your rationale, which is what the research will be based around. So it tells the problem, why is it necessary to solve or address the problem? And you need to provide also how this problem can be solved. It's because it's not just you're going to formulate on your own the method or ways on how to address a problem. The methodology of your research should be logical, should be acceptable. And create a research space model for research introductions according to Jens Wales. Okay, the moves will help you write your arguments in your research introduction clearly and convincingly. Okay, the Jens Wales moves or the rhetorics in CARS will help you organize your thoughts, your ideas, information, important details necessary to provide in your research introduction. So this is the format being used in international standard. Now, this is the moves that will be used when you want to publish your paper. Very important that you need to know the moves in Jens Wales. First off, move 1, establishing a territory. In establishing a territory, you need to provide the context of the research and the necessary background. You need to put your work into perspective by demonstrating that your general area of research is important, it is critical, it's interesting, it's problematic. Because if it's not problematic, then what's the purpose? Why you want to conduct a research, right? It should be relevant or otherwise worthy of investigation. So which means that in the move 1, you really have to establish that your research has a purpose. You are establishing your territory by telling your listeners or your readers that this is an important topic. Next one, move 1, step 1, claiming centrality. Convince the readers that the research about to be reported is part of a lively, significant, or well-established research area. So, which means that the topic that you're going to conduct or going to study is significant and important in the related fields. Okay? The problem should be relatable in different contexts, thus it should be investigated through research. So you really need to find a topic that is interesting, that is relevant. Okay, step 2, move 1, making topic generalizations. Okay. It's about statements of current knowledge, practices, or phenomena in the field. So in this particular step, you need to provide the claims and findings of the authors or experts of your topic or the field of your interest, which means that you need to provide, related literature and related studies. You need to relate your study to the already existing studies and compare if you have the same observation, the same results, since your study is not new at all. Thus, you need to establish what spells the difference between your study and theirs. So, since all studies have limitations, that's why it's very important that you need to provide related studies so that you can establish that the topic that you want to explore is well established. Okay, step 3 in move 1, reviewing previous items of research. Relate what has been found on the topic and who found it. Okay, as what I have mentioned in step 2, you need to provide related studies in your background. So the arrangement, if you can still remember, what's the proper arrangement? Rans.
Sir?
What's the proper arrangement when you provide related studies in introduction, background of the study?
Wait lang, sir. Kalimut ko. So,
Nah.
parang arrangement,
Proper
sir, sa...
arrangement. Yes.
Nakalimut ko, sir.
Uy. You need to
Sige, sir.
provide at least 3
Ano
related
ang concert
studies.
ng international, local, o ano?
Yes, exactly. The arrangement should be international, local, and international, national, and local. That's the proper arrangement when you present related studies. You need to provide the authors also of those related studies and the year when the study conducted. Then move to establishing a niche. In this move, the author argues that there is an open niche in existing research space that needs to be filled through additional research. So in this specific move, you need to provide the problem. You need to problematize your research. So what's the niche that you want to fill in? What's the problem that you want to address? What's the problem that should be addressed through your research? This action also refers to making a clear and cogent argument that for particular piece of research is important and possesses value. So, meaning you need to indicate the gap, establish the gap. What's the specific gap of your research? That's ito. In move to establishing a niche, you need to indicate a gap. The author demonstrates that earlier research does not sufficiently address all existing questions or problems. Okay. As what I have mentioned earlier, your study is not what do you call that? It's not that really a new study unless it's really a new study. But there are pre-existing studies that are the same with yours. But you need to provide what spells the difference between your study and the pre-existing studies. What's their limitations? What's the part or which areas that they were not able to fill in or address? So that's what you're going to indicate in your research. The gap or the problem. Question raising. The author asks questions about previous research, suggesting that additional research needs to be done, which means that you need to raise inquiries or questions, whatever it is, in order to, what do you call that, to challenge the status quo, to challenge the pre-existing studies. And your research is the one who can provide or who can suffice. It can suffice the loopholes of the previous research studies. Next one, continuing a tradition. The author presents the research as a useful extension of existing research, which means that previous studies can be duplicated, but there's you can provide the difference between your study and previous studies through indicating the setting. Kasi possible, different settings, different results. Like for example, yung sa study. For example, kung levels of speech, so you're gonna study. Wait. Give me a minute. Levels of speech anxiety and academic performance. Kasi yung kinuha nila yon yung last year sa study. Kim man yata. Yeah. Sa grade 12 last year, they studied the levels of speech anxiety and academic performance. If there's significant relationship between these two variables. Yung sa grade 12 last year, yung setting is sa senior high school. Pero yung kinuha nila, yung study na idea sa sa college. Sa USEP man yata. Talaga sa USEP. That, it's a thesis. he got the idea from a thesis in USEP. So, pwede, there's different, the results are different kasi iba yung respondents, iba yung setting, iba yung nature ng ano ng respondents sa study. So that's one of the things that you can use in order to differentiate your study from the others. So later on, kasi last year, yung sa qualitative research ninyo, related literature lang, pero walang related studies. Sa gagawin nyo ngayon, the format that you're going to follow when you write your research is a thesis format, meaning you need to provide related studies. So, diba, I think I already discussed this one in related literature. In related studies, you need to provide the similarities as well as the difference. What's the relatedness? What's the difference? So, that's the point wherein you can differentiate your study from pre-existing studies. Next one is move 3, occupying a niche. In this move, the author turns the niche established in move 2 into the research space that he or she will fill. That is, the author demonstrates how he or she will substantiate the counterclaim made, fill the gap identified, answer the questions asked, or continue the research tradition. So let's go back to move 1. In move 1, you need to establish the territory, right? You need to establish your topic, your observation. In move 2, you need to establish the problem. You need to provide the gap. In move 3, you need to provide how are you going to address the gap, or how are you going to fill in the gap identified in your research. So in step 1A, move 3, outlining purposes. The author indicates the main purpose or purposes of the current article, which means that you need to provide your objective. What are your aims? What are your objectives? What are your purposes? Why you want to conduct the study? And then step 1B, announcing present research. The author describes the research in the current article. So you need to indicate or contextualize what's your research all about, meaning the very specific of your research. Next, step 2, announcing principal findings. The author presents the main conclusion of his or her research. Although in research introduction, you don't have to provide the results of your study yet. It's because this is just the introduction. But you have to provide what's your assumptions. What will be the results of the study? How are the people can benefit from your study? What's the significance or how can your study help the existing problem that you provided in your move 2, establishing the gap or establishing the niche. Step 3, indicating the structure of the research article. The author previews the organization of the article. You need to provide your methodology and the theoretical framework that you're going to use for your study, but in just a summary or synthesis. Okay. So this is the summary of the Cars or Johnswell's move. First is in move 1, it's all about the situation. It's all about your observations. Next is the problem. Establishing a niche, the move 2. You need to provide the problem. Then the move 3, you need to provide the solution. So this is what you're going to remember when you write your introduction. First, the situation. What are your observations? Second, the problem. You need to clearly indicate the gap of your research. The next is the solution. How are you going to address your research, the problem of your study? the methodology, the theoretical framework. We'll show you examples of research. Wait lang ha.
Sir, si Anjo daw sir kay wala na daw siya load, di siya kasulod.
Sige lang, okay lang.
Yes, sir.
Kabulo naman mo, ani, oy. So, maayo na introduction ganito. Wait. Kini microfinance. Maayo nila introduction. Ito. For example, this is the background of the study. Low-income households utilize various course of actions just provide their basic needs such as an education, housing, food, health, etc. Some households resort to lending services to loan money, expecting to help them cope their economic and financial struggles. In the Philippines and even the other parts of the world, poverty has been a long-lasting issue that strains the quality of life of the Filipinos. Different financial institutions and organizations have been exerting efforts to help, wrong grammar, money, to help people improve their socioeconomic situation through microfinance. Microfinance is a form of financial service for those people who have no access to formal banking. It incorporates services of loans for individuals, groups, and small businesses. It had also been extended and created a form of savings account and also known as micro savings, as well as insurance and money transfer services, according to Ketchel 2018. So this is a specific example. The first part is the situation. It refers to the situations being observed by the researchers. So, topic nila is about microfinance. But before that, they set the background first. Why microfinance existed in the very first place? First off, it's because of poverty. And in order to alleviate poverty, people created microfinance in order to suffice the financial problems. And then they provided the definition of microfinance by using the definition of an expert in the field. So, ganito dapat pagkasulat sa first part ng introduction. Next is, microfinance services had been acknowledged by many as a key to alleviating poverty in a certain country or area, which allows the market to operate, enabling the poor to invest in their futures and bring themselves out of poverty. This movement of microfinance institutions is powerful, and many organizations highlight the benefits of these services. The organizations that have these financial services realize that this is a way of hope for the poor to get out of their situations. However, past studies divulge that socioeconomic problems are still prevalent among the microfinance clients. So, ito na yung problem nila. So, they set the background first, and then they provided the problem. Anong problem? Kasi, even though meron ng microfinance, but the problem is, wala siyang significant result or there's no significant effect to the quality of life of the client. So bakit ganon? If the main purpose of microfinance is to help people to solve their socioeconomic problems. Pero bakit walang masyadong effect sa kanila? Socioeconomic problems are still prevalent among microfinance clients. So that's the idea that you need to provide in your move to sa establishing a niche. So ito na, the relevant studies. So ito, if you cannot find local studies, so it's fine if dalawang international or isang national or isang international or dalawang national. Okay lang ganyan. If you cannot find a study that is conducted locally. So ito na yung step 3. The studies mentioned an increasing population of microfinance institutions and their clients are proof that, microfinance is interesting to be explored in research studies. So you need to indicate, express that your study is interesting, significant to explore. This study aimed to determine the socioeconomic impacts of microfinance to the selected households in Davao City. And you need to provide your purpose. What's the objective of your study? The study utilized descriptive correlational research design in order to measure and examine the impacts of microfinance loan services to the socioeconomic dimension San Rafael Maa, Davao City. So yung methods, the design, the research locale, and what is your study all about? Dito sa 2-3. Nakita pa tayo example. Yun. With the recent advancement and innovations of the technology in the 21st century, playing games has become a top preference for individuals who are technologically inclined. Gaming 2018 states that out of the estimated 7.6 billion people living on Earth, there are approximately 2.2 billion gamers in the world as of July 2018, which means that almost a third of people on this planet are gamers. With the massive demand from the expanding community of gamers, many game developers and designers want to manufacture games that may appeal to their interests. With that in mind, game developers and designers tend to ponder what are the factors that affect the preferences of gamers in game design in order to create games that will captivate the interest of the gamers. So in this specific example, the authors stated that their observation about the current situation in the gaming world and about the developers. Since gaming is a business, developers wanted to create or develop games which can hook the gamers or which can stir the interest of the gamers in order to patronize the game that they're going to develop. So itong study na to, it's about correlate siya if yung personality traits ng gamers can affect the preferences of their preferences sa game designs ng isang game. The demographic game design, a concept coined by Bateman and Boone 2005, is a design process that identifies the targeted audience, then studies the demographics of the audience. Understanding who are the audience and what do they desire are the foundations of demographic game design. So, itong game developers, they just do not develop a game based on their own imagination or based on their own preferences. But since they want to market the game that they want to develop, they need to consider the interest of their target market. Marago nagnegosyo ka. First is you want to tawagan na oy. In the business field, before you establish a business, you need to tawag yan, mag-feasibility study sa ka. You need to conduct feasibility study first in order to identify if marketable ba imong product that you want to present to the consumers. The same thing with developing a game. Kung appealing ba siya sa gamers. That's why they are considering the interest, the personality, and the preferences of the gamers. So that's basically the problem that they want to study or explore for this research. It aims to study the demographics of the audience of such personality arises as a suitable variable to identify several characteristics that will help to understand the gamer population. So the study is not just about identifying the preferences, but it's also about the demographics. It's about the population, the personal data, personal information of the respondents of this study, which are the gamers. Ito yung gamit nila is MAD, Mechanics, Dynamics, and Aesthetics Framework. So related studies. And the step 3. The studies aforementioned that personality might have an effect on the game design preferences of the audience. Thus, the demographic game design is relevant to be studied. So this is a specific move. You really need to state your purpose, why your study is significant, is relevant, what's your objective, what are your aims, the methodology of your research, what's your theoretical framework, how are you going to conduct, what's your design. Could be descriptive ba or descriptive correlation research design. Ganun. So do you have questions, clarifications about our topic?
Sir, gato kung sa, di ba, ano man yun, mag-convert lang man to namo. Bawal gyapon to siya gamiton tong uban dito, sir. Ng mga
What do you
RRL.
mean? No, the same lang kasi the same lang man yung theoretical framework. Ang instrument
okay.
lang jud ang mag-change. Tapos, you need to add more related literature sa inyong study.
Sige, sir.
Para ang ma-cover na to ang scope gyud sa inyong sa inyong topic gani. Like for example, ang related literature manggod maka-affect siya sa inyong construction sa inyong instrument, especially if you don't have a standardized research instrument for your study. Wala kay research instrument na ma-adapt. If you're going to construct your own research instrument, mga self-constructed research instrument, it's very important that you need to gather a lot of related literature para makita nato ang scope yun sa inyong study.
Okay,
like for
sir.
example, in okay na. Ay, wala ko na share screen, wait. Kini nga study mo ni pinakakapoy sa tanan. Taas kilang scope. Ay, ara. Like for example, adapted din siya. This is an adapted research instrument. Ito yung ginawa namin. Like for example, itong sensation, fantasy, narrative, fellowship, discovery, challenge, expression, submission. Ito. These are the indicators or what we call the design preferences. Ito, we were able to construct these statements such as like, I like to play video games which can give me satisfaction. I like to play video games which can provide amusement and happiness. I like to play video games with nice graphics, sound, and music which can motivate me to play. I like to play video games which can excite me every time I play. Dili na siya nagbuhat-buhat na mag-ana ha. Wala naman nagibuhat-buhat lang na naisip lang namo. We have references why we were able to construct or formulate these statements. Gi-base namo ni siya sa related literature na amo ang nagather. By the way, i-discuss man ako ni sa research instrument sa second quarter yata. But since you asked this question, we'll mention na lang since we have a time pa naman. So kini siya, we were able to formulate or construct these statements. It's because of the related literatures that we were able to gather. That's why it's very important. You really need to enrich your related literature. Sa inyong qualitative, lahi ito. Diba, dili ito inaani inyo ha? Opinion
Yes, sir.
to inyo ha? Opinion generating questions to inyong research instrument. Kini siya, mag-rate sila. Scaling ni siya. Like for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As meaning. Okay. Strongly disagree, neither disagree nor agree or strongly agree. Muna siya ang interpretation. Scale value, allocation, description, of interpretation. Sila kay ano jud ni sila ni nagbuhat ani last year kay wala jud ni format na gi-follow kay ang mga previous research studies sa tong mga nag-graduate na grade 12 kay wala may established na format or prescribed format ang CCSA na senior high school. Muna nag-ano jud mi. Yeah, ako po first time po to na ako last year nag-handle og research subject. Nyo at least kamo na may format na ma-follow. So unsa pa yung questions? The same lang gihapon. Yes.
Sa katong sir, batong sa intro sir, mangita na may bagong kung related na katong international, national o local.
You need to evaluate if you can still use the related studies in your from your previous research sa qualitative. You need to evaluate. Kamo ni kabaluan na kung related ba siya sa inyong study na quantitative. Isa pa. No more questions? It's still 11:30. We have 12 minutes left. Dagan pa mong pangutana. Wala na? Excuse me. So, klaro na sa 2A.
Yes, sir.
Are going to write your research introduction. Oh, karon pa si
Yes, sir.
Pika ni. Karon pala kang sulod. Musa naman katipan ni. Tef, kumusta naman ka, Tef? May reply. So, wala na yung pangutana. Wala na yung clarification. I think that's it. That concludes our meeting for this day. So, if you have, kung napamoy questions lang sa inyo while doing your research or writing your research, just send a message. We'll try to look for answers if you have such questions. Pero katong sa uban na si Rosel, ay Tia,
Sir,
kumusta na inyo ha? Wala pa na ako
Kuan,
nabasa.
sir, ano?
Unsa tong na theory ang na-added ko lang.
Ana, si... Wala pa ni Rosal na ingon sa ako, sir, pero ana siya, dili na lang daw apilon ang closing interest, katong kuan na lang daw, katong factor, ano to? Lang. Ay, asa na to? Katong kuan na lang daw, purchase intention na lang daw, sir.
Purchase intentions na lang. O, sige, i-consolidate
Pwede na lang
lang
daw.
mo.
Okay, sir.
Consolidate ako sa inyo. Sige. I think that's it. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining the virtual meeting. I'm going to end the
Yes, sir.
conversation.